Logical fallacies are stupid and immature. That's right. Come at me, internet debate dorks. I think they're dumb and I don't think we need them. Now, here's what I mean. I don't think the logical fallacies are for people who want more joy in their lives. They're for extremists who want to be right more than they want to grow closer to the people in their lives. If you want true, deep love and joy in your life, you've got to let them go. Last week I was at potluck and I spent a few hours having a fascinating discussion with someone who had been very politically active and passionate for a few years. I'm not going to tell you whose team he was on, before walking away and deciding that he was tired of keyboard warriors not doing anything and extremism, and that he could really only have an impact locally. We spent a few hours talking about the myriad of things that annoy us about the way Americans talk to each other about politics, and he said something that really stuck with me. I'm going to quote him directly. I think the thing that's broken in American politics is the idea that it can be won. Americans tend to think of things in terms of winning and losing for almost everything, but in politics, there are no winners or losers. Politics is the endless negotiation of finding the best way of life for the greatest number of people. There is no end game. There's been something that irked me about logical fallacies for a long time, but I've never been able to put my finger on it. I came of age in the Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Four Horsemen of Atheism BS days, where a bunch of old guys who weren't that happy convinced us that the best way to be was atheist. And looking back, I think we all should have seen that they seemed grumpy. None of them seemed like they were having that good of a time, but they had so much identity tied up in being right. That's what has always bothered me about the logical fallacies. Everyone I've ever met who could rattle them off had one thing in common, and that was that they were absolutely obsessed with being right. They treated arguments not as discussions or a chance to understand those in their lives and grow closer to them, but as a chance to win. In other words, they sucked. They were miserable and they sucked to be around. They were extremists. Now, I define an extremist as someone who has outsourced their happiness to the solving of an unsolvable problem. This is anyone who has made a pact with themselves that until something huge that they have no control over has changed, like until everyone is evangelical Christian, or everyone is Democrat, or everyone is Republican, and they've made a pact with themselves that they will continue to be miserable until those conditions are met. And since there are always going to be things that they can't control and people who disagree with them, extremists have made a pact with themselves to live in perpetual misery. There's a wonderful quote by John Cleese that I'm obsessed with, and there's a beautiful video. If you look up John Cleese on extremism on YouTube, you can find it. The quote is, "The great thing about having enemies is that you can pretend that all the badness in the whole world is in your enemies, and all the goodness in the world is in you." Attractive, isn't it? So if you, therefore, have a lot of anger and resentment in you anyway, and enjoy abusing people, then you can pretend that you're only doing it because these enemies of yours are such very bad persons. And if it wasn't for them, you'd actually be good-natured and courteous and rational all the time. So if you want to feel good, become an extremist. That's by John Cleese. And I love it because he's talking about anyone who, I call it someone who worships at the church of gotcha logic. There's a certain type of person who've memorized every logical fallacy, ad hominem, slippery slope, red herring, bulbous green onion, junkyard horseflesh, etc., and they just can't wait to catch someone in the act. They think this makes them rational and mature. It doesn't. It makes them a hall monitor with a thesaurus. It makes them an HOA person who loves catching people who haven't trimmed their grass to the correct height. In other words, a boring loser. Anyone who builds their identity around being correct is not interested in truth. They're searching for victory, and victory is not understanding. Anyone uninterested in compromise is a bully. Being right is a very lonely, isolating path. You don't get wiser by catching other people's mistakes. You get wiser by noticing your own, being honest about them with people you love and trust, and growing past them. For anyone interested in building a joyful life, conversation isn't a weapon you wield to always be right. It's a way to build a deeper understanding of the people in your community so you can understand your place as someone who's part of something much bigger than just you. Happiness doesn't care if you win. Happiness cares if you, the people you love, and the community you belong to feel fulfilled. Extremists only care if they win. Joyful, fulfilled people care if we win. And logical fallacies are not what are going to help you build joy and happiness.